Hi there, and thank you all for joining LumiGrow today for our LED Growers Guide for Vine Crops webinar. It looks like we have a good amount of attendees here now, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Feel free to be submitting any questions on the Q&A panel or through the chat throughout this presentation. We'll make sure to get to some of your guys' questions here at the end of our presentation. So my name is Brandon Newkirk, and I'm the Marketing Communications Manager here at LumiGrow. Working with the industry's leading plant scientists, our goal is to teach you, our growers, the nuances of plant and light interactions and how best to use light to gain precision control for eliciting higher yields and improve quality for your production. Today, our in-house plant research group will be walking you through some recommendations for growing vine crops with LEDs. We'll introduce some exciting new LumiGrow technology. We'll show you a product video of some of this new technology. And we'll end today with a Q&A where we'll answer some of your questions on the air and be answering further questions via email, or feel free to give us a call anytime. Now, speaking of precision control, let me introduce LumiGrow's smart horticultural lighting solution. In 2007, we were founded with the purpose of building a smart horticultural lighting solution. And what does that mean? Well, we provide a dynamic LED hardware fixture controlled through our cloud-based software to give you precision control over your crop production. We have 30,000 plus fixtures growing a variety of crops around the world. We're engaged in over 40 research institution and commercial partner trials focused on furthering the world's understanding of spectral science. And this is all done through our in-house R&D department to develop a solution focused on your needs. So at LumiGrow, we go beyond innovating a leading edge solution, but we take a partnership approach when deploying a lighting strategy with you, our growers. We start with a world-class product. It's a powerful LED lighting solution capable of changing intensity, spectrum, and photoperiod dynamically from any phone, tablet, or computer. We then engage directly with your project. Our in-house plant research group collaborates with you to define your goals, establish trial protocols, and then we stay engaged to make sure that you're deploying smart lighting in a way that really impacts your production the most. And then, of course, as a smart lighting solution, we're really utilizing that data and our software application to really enhance that lighting automation and zone control, giving you precision control, also with an ease of use not found in other smart solutions. Today, we have Melanie Yelton, LumiGrow's VP of Research, and Jake Hawley, Research Associate, on with us today. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, thanks, Brandon. So my name is Melanie Yelton, and I got my PhD at UC Davis in plant pathology. Then I moved on to Stanford University, where I taught for many years and also did research with corn and alfalfa. And actually, I knew the founder of LumiGrow, so I've tracked the implementation of this technology for many years. I came on as a consultant about 4 years ago, very part-time, and then came on really full-time because I was intrigued by just getting this technology into the hands of our growers. So, Jake?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jake Hawley. I'm a researcher here at LumiGrow. Just like Melanie, I got my degree up at UC Davis, doing work with some ornamentals under supplemental lighting and LEDs. So I've been lucky enough to be doing research in greenhouses for a number of years now. And, you know, it's really great to work at LumiGrow where I can really help directly work with growers and deploy this technology and hopefully get the full benefit out of everything we can do here. Yep, that's all about me.
Great, thanks guys. It's exciting to have you here today, and I'm excited to jump into our presentation. So the LED Growers Guide for Vine Crops. What is that? If you guys haven't yet read it, the LED Growers Guide for Vine Crops is an actionable guide for vine crop growers to really use dynamic lighting strategies to maximize profits, boost yields, increase crop quality, and elicit desired plant characteristics. This is really a unique guide in the industry, and it's an industry first. All these recommendations herein are based on rigorous commercial research trials, and those are trials from LumiGrow's in-house plant research, as well as third-party research, university research, and some of the larger research institutions in North America and around the world. If you guys haven't yet read the LumiGrow's LED Grower Guide for Vine Crops, feel free to download it at lumigrow.com. Go to the Applied Research section under Luma News and download from there, or feel free to reach out to us directly, and we're happy to get you that information. And any custom information as well. So jumping right into it, Melanie, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Vine Crop Guide is really important to us because it gives us a format for sitting down with our partners as we begin that initial stage of developing and understanding what their objectives are and going through and either creating a trial on a small scale or a large scale to really understand the different varieties that they're using and what the variability will be. So again, this vine crop guide gives us a starting point to begin that partnership process. So we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper, but first I wanted to just have just 2 or 3 slides here where we're just going to go over the fundamentals of plant physiology and how we think about how light impacts plants. So, okay, Jake, you pick that up.
So we like to think about how plants see light in 3 primary distinct ways. The first way we like to talk about is intensity. We measure this in a unit called micromoles of photons per meter squared per second. So this is the amount of light a plant sees at any given second in time. The next aspect is called photoperiod. So photoperiod is measured in hours, and that's the overall amount of time your plant is lit for. So this can either be short days or long days, or defined in hours. So a short day is a photoperiod of less than 12 hours of light, and a long day is typically defined as more than 14 hours. And we use intensity and photoperiod to calculate our DLI, our daily light integral, which is measured in moles per day. And we'll be using that to discuss our crop guides a little bit further on. And the last thing is spectrum. So spectrum is the mix of different colors. So your red to blue ratio or red to far red, the amount of green or possibly ultraviolet in your spectrum. And all of these have a pretty dramatic impact on overall plant physiology, growth, and production. So yeah, I'll pass it back to Melanie to talk a little bit about that.
Right, and as Jake goes over, there's 3 primary ways that plants see light. We're finding more and more that one is not more important than the others. A lot of the work that Jake's done this year, I'm really proud of in terms of really showing how photoperiod is so significant in ways that we had never really realized, even for day neutral plants. But what we try to do here at LumiGrow is really think fully about how lights can direct plants to have the characteristics that we need and that we want. And those come under the headings of flavor, nutrition, just the quality of the plant, the production, making sure the production dates are met. And also, we're seeing more and more fighting disease. We're seeing that the bugs, we're learning more and more about how we can direct and prevent pests from attacking the plants using LED lights, and also how we can create a sustainable alternative to plant growth regulators, creating plants that flower on time and have the fullness and the height requirements that a grower needs. But it's really complex, and this next slide kind of illustrates how complex it is. You want to look at providing the correct light at the right time. And this illustration demonstrates that, for example, in the seedling stage, we might ask the plant to expand their leaves, providing a high red environment. Then using tomatoes as an example, when we ask them to graft and heal the bottom to the scion, the top part, we provide a high blue environment to promote that healing. Then as the plant moves on to the house and we ask it to grow rapidly in a vegetative way, and then again, adding back blue light and ask it to go into that reproductive stage. And then in production, it's that delicate balance between reproductive and vegetative growth that a tomato grower needs to get maximum production. So this cartoon makes it look really, really simple. But again, like I said, it is very complex. And Jake, why don't you talk about how complex it is?
Sure. So one of the things that we do know about LEDs and their application is that we've been able to scientifically validate the genetic influence of different wavelengths on plants. And so the figure on the right kind of shows an overview of the different pigments and accessory pigments and the reaction they have at different wavelengths of light. And it's so much more than just photosynthesis and absorbing light into chlorophyll. We're finding that we can use spectrum to influence stuff like phytochrome equilibrium state, the expression of cryptochrome and how much that's influenced in plant growth, as well as a bunch of other pigments, whether it's anthocyanin development, overall plant growth, and some of the other things we mentioned before, like disease resistance. So these all get linked back to the overall genetics and the interaction of all these different proteins and receptors to result in the results that we want to see. So we're really working hard here to take this information we're gathering from our genetic responses and share these learnings in an applied way for vine crops and greenhouses.
Great, thanks guys. So as you can all understand, lighting is actually fairly complex, and that's why it's really important to have a dynamic LED fixture as we noted, to really address each stage in the crop growth cycle, as well as being able to have that adjustability, to really have that precision control to direct your crop's growth, whether it's variety dependent, crop type dependent, and to really just touch on the beginning of what we can do for vine crops with dynamic LEDs. We're going to cover some of what we can do with tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers, go through some lighting requirements, and then really look into some of the spectrum research that's out there available from various universities, as well as in-house LumiGrow research. So to get us started, Jake, would you like to tell us a little about tomato LED lighting requirements?
Sure. So here's, you can see on the figure on the right side of the screen, our overall recommendations for growing tomatoes. And these recommendations are, implementing an LED style strategy. So these are really focused on having LED style production. And so in terms of all the other factors, like what season you plant in and how you grow your crop is unique to LEDs. So we see three distinct stages here, a seedling stage, a grafting stage, and a production stage. And the lighting recommendations are a little bit different from each one. So from a seedling stage, we recommend about 13 to 16 moles per day of overall light within the greenhouse over an 18 to 20 hour photoperiod. So seedlings don't necessarily need as much light. They're not growing flowers, they're not reproducing in terms of fruit. And so the light requirement's a lot lower. When you actually go out and grafting the plant, you're making a wound, you're stopping the flow of water from the roots to the top of the plant. And so they really can't take a whole lot of light. 5 to 7 moles per day is all. But they do need some light over a photoperiod of somewhere between 14 to 20 hours, depending on your varieties and their response to extended photoperiods. But this gives the plant enough light to go ahead and continue its natural processes, but doesn't push it too hard to the point where you're going to wear it out before it has time to heal. So lastly, in our production environment, you notice we have quite a range here, 20 to 50 moles per day in supplemental lighting over an 18 to 20 hour photoperiod. So this wide range comes in fact that, seasonally, tomatoes are a very light hungry crop. And if you can have a period of really good light, you get good production out of your tomatoes. So that's where there really is no upper end. And you really have to pay very close attention to the economics, where you're marketing, what season you're producing in, to really narrow in on what you should be applying. But at the very minimum, you need to be applying at least 20 moles per day to maintain good production in your greenhouse. So that's kind of the basics of just overall lighting. And I'll pass back to Melanie to talk a little bit more about the specifics of spectrum and the research that we've been doing.
Thanks, Jake. Yeah, and so when we sit down with our growers, what you need to depend on us to do is to really comb the literature for the papers and the information that's really relevant to your particular grow. Like Jake was just saying, there can be a broad range of DLI that we recommend for tomatoes. Tomatoes, as you well know, there's everything from tomatoes on the vine to cherry tomatoes and grape tomatoes and beefsteak tomatoes, and they all have their unique profiles and what they require. So we come to you armed with that knowledge to help you make those decisions about what you want in terms of your production. But just here are some of the few examples of the things that we will give you information and advice about. For example, if you are a propagator, we will use a high blue environment to keep your plants short, compact, full, and also matching the rootstock to the scion. Moving on to doing and completing that grafting, again, a higher blue environment will cause greater healing more rapidly. As you go into production, there's information that demonstrates that certain levels of blue light will allow and promote flowering and fruiting, as well as give a superior fruit quality. And then it has been determined in several studies that LEDs can direct and maximize vitamin C content of greater than 25% more than the controls of no light. So these are just some of the ways that we use LEDs to optimize and create the best quality. So going into cucumbers are just a little bit different than tomatoes. They're the second most popular vine crop, but we don't have a grafting stage here. So a little bit simpler. You see there in the seedling stage, it's a low light, I'd say moderate light, a DLI of 13 to 16 moles per day. And the photoperiod, again, 18 to 20. The temperature is pretty constant from day to evening. As we move into production, we boost up the light significantly, not as much as in tomatoes. You can see we're nowhere near that 50 that we gave you for tomatoes. The photoperiod remains the same, But you see on the bottom there, the day and night temperature are different. Day is being 23 to 27 and night temperature is 17 to 21. This is where we're utilizing that differential to drive photosynthase into the fruit production. So those are some of the differences between tomatoes and cucumbers. So the research is also very interesting in cucumbers. Jake, why don't you pick that up?
Sure. So we've been running some trials with some partners we have up at Glenwood Valley Farms and looking at some of the productivity they're doing there. And what we're finding is that the LED lit plants seem to be healthier and have a longer longevity, able to last a couple extra weeks of good, healthy production in your greenhouse. And what this means is the amount of turns or transplants you have to do in your greenhouse per year might go down from a number like 4 to a number like 3. And that gives you more weeks of production in your greenhouse and a higher overall productivity. And there's some other things that are really difficult to quantify with some of these LED effects. Like for example, the fruit quality, the crunch of the cucumbers, the crispness of them is definitely improved under LEDs. And it's difficult to get the numbers behind that, but you can certainly taste it when you have them. Coming from University of Arizona, we know that cucumbers are very sensitive to spectrum. They prefer a high red spectrum in terms of versus other higher blue spectrums. But we do know that in full production, adding blue light is not going to negatively impact anything. But certainly they tend to prefer a little bit higher red. And we know that increasing supplemental light will increase 1.3 to 1.5% of dry mass of the overall plant with every 1% increase in supplemental lighting. So that shows you a pretty good ratio that as you add on more supplemental lighting, you will get more plant growth pretty incrementally, at least up to a certain point with crop production. So I'll pass this back to Melanie to talk a little bit more about peppers.
Yeah, I just want to add to Jake, when you're talking about cucumbers. Cucumbers is one of the places where we've really seen variation in plant disease too. In some houses, we can see where if there's a trial going on with high pressure sodium versus our lights, we can see a variation in terms of the powdery mildew that you see on the high pressure sodium plants versus the LED grown plants. So I found that very dramatic. Okay, but moving on to peppers. Peppers we are very excited about because peppers are not traditionally grown with lighting at all. And so we have some growers that are investigating using LED lighting on a large scale with their peppers and getting great success. The basic pepper requirements, we go back to that requirement for grafting. Many of our peppers are grafted, not quite as many as tomatoes, but many of the peppers are grafted. So we have that seedling stage with a moderate light level of 12 to 16 moles per day. And then during the grafting and healing phase, we drop way down to 5 to 7 moles and also drop the photoperiod down to 14 to 20 hours. And then bumping back up in production, very much like tomatoes, where peppers can utilize a high level of light of 25 to 50 moles per day, maintaining the photoperiod back at the seedling level of 18 to 20 hours per day. And you see, once again, like tomatoes, we use that differential, that daytime versus nighttime temperature to create the fruit quality that we want. So, and there's a few peppers out already on peppers and LEDs and the success there. So Jake, why don't you comment on those?
Sure. So peppers, new to lighting, some of this research really started up at NASA down at Kennedy Space Center, looking at some of the LED effects on seedling growth. And what they really found is, the mixture of red to blue light builds a very robust plant that's very healthy and good growing in that aspect. For some of the research we've been doing in-house, we found that once again with peppers, the disease resistance and overall health of the plant versus whether it's fungal pathogens or insects tends to be a lot stronger under LEDs in comparison to unlit light sources or other growing methodologies. And it's not just what we're seeing within the United States. Over in Korea, they're also saying that in comparison to growing under fluorescent lamps, LEDs can be superior in not only saving energy but also building a better biomass than the plant itself. We're also finishing up some trials working with Harrow Research Station and Agri-Food Canada, looking at overall pepper production under supplemental lighting. And we're finding that just under 120 micromoles per meter squared per second, we can increase the total harvested fruit weight by 18 to 33%. And what's even interesting about this too is we're seeing the same effects with peppers as we are with some of our other crops in terms of the fruit quality is definitely superior under LEDs. We certainly find that the fruit wall itself and the overall crunchiness or crispiness of the produce is definitely superior and of a higher quality underneath the LED fixtures in our trials. So with that, I'll pass it back to Melanie to kind of wrap up our vine crop guide.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, so hopefully from just this brief outline and sort of discussion about some of the content that you'll find is in the vine crop guide, we've piqued your interest that you'll go to our website and download it. But again, it illustrates the way we like to sit down with our partners as we go over their objectives. Maybe the objective is to have greater production. Maybe the objective is to reduce disease. Maybe the objective is to have post-harvest quality and longevity. So we began our work together by starting with a guide like this, creating a plan, and then part of that plan is making sure that the light is uniform and that you're getting consistent DLI. So Brandon's going to speak to some of the new technologies that we're just developing and that will address creating consistent PPFD throughout your greenhouse and also creating consistent DLI.
Great, thanks guys. That was a really great overview, and I hope that you guys are beginning to understand that you can really accomplish a lot with light, but that lighting strategies are really very specific. And that's why with the Dynamics Lighting Solution, LumiGrow is here as your resource to implement custom lighting strategies for your specific growth goals, and our plant scientists will work directly with you to deploy a solution that will have the highest impact on your crops as well as your profits. There's really, a higher level view that you can take of your production to be able to really measure the profitability when you're increasing that crop quality. And that's something that we've really developed our solution around. So looking at our smart horticultural lighting solution, we have our Pro Series E smart horticultural lighting fixtures, as well as our Smart Par wireless control system. So this is really the basis of our smart horticultural lighting solution, where you have powerful LED hardware that can be adjusted for spectrum, intensity, and photoperiod. And then you have our Smart Par software that you can use from any phone, tablet, or computer to adjust that lighting, create lighting schedules, enable some zone control, be able to, and do some nuances with the lights as well. You switch to a white light view mode if you need to inspect your crops or for worker comfort, or maybe late in a production cycle, switch to blue light to create more compact plants or to reduce stretching. There's just any number of things you can do with our smart horticultural lighting solution, and that's really why we're here as a resource. And as Melanie mentioned, DLI control is extremely important when it comes to implementing a lighting strategy. That's why we've created our Smart Par light sensor module. This is the newest product release for our smart horticultural lighting suite. And what you're getting here is a light sensor module that integrates with our Pro Series E or Pro Series fixtures and measures the ambient sunlight within the greenhouse, aggregates that data, uses predictive analytics, and then delivers ideal lighting conditions day in and day out, regardless of season, regardless of climate, regardless of any limitations in your greenhouse infrastructure, whether that's glass transmittance, whether that's shadowing. This is really creating an automated control for your smart lighting. And for those that sign up and order our Smart Par light sensor modules early on, you'll gain access to our reporting and monitoring features coming soon. You'll be able to get access to these for free if you're part of our early subscribers to this technology, and really get excited about having the sun manage your LumiGrow LED lighting system. To explain a little more about how this technology works, I'd like to pass it back to Melanie, who can speak to some of the DLI control and what we're seeing in the real world here.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. So many of our growers are using sort of a threshold control system, if they're using a control system at all, and that's pretty rough. Again, it might help to turn off the high pressure sodium lights at certain times of the day, but because of the fragility of high pressure sodiums, it really can't be utilized aggressively. Whereas in LEDs, we have the advantage of being able to really turn our lights on and off, and dim them at will, if you will, without damaging the lights. And so we've used that advantage to create a sensor which can be moment by moment measuring the sunlight and then adjusting the lights as needed. So we spent the summer testing our sensor and validating it, and now we have it deployed to several test facilities around the world. And what you see on the left there is how the total sunlight is evened out, if you will, so that the DLI remains consistent. And I think that graph on the left is great, but I think Brandon has a video that shows it even more dramatically.
Sure. So when looking at the technology, it can get complex pretty quick. And I think the important thing here is to just realize the benefits of the Smart Power Light Sensor module, and that by having consistent DLI day in and day out, you're having consistent crop quality day in and day out.
Right.
So it's really creating an insurance of your crop quality, as well as an additional energy savings. Say that the sun is really maximizing its use that day. There's not a lot of cloud cover and you're in the summer. You're automatically going to scale down that LumiGrow lighting and save some energy and just be more efficient with your overall strategy. But say on a cloudy day, you're really going to ramp up that LED lighting to ensure your crop quality. It's creating that balance between energy and profits. That's really that sweet spot that we're trying to get with our smart lighting and really making it easy for you to use. So to further illustrate that point, we have a video that I'd like to show you guys, and feel free to submit any questions in the Q&A. We're going to go straight into a Q&A after this, and excited to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, I like to think with the DLI sensor, there are no cloudy days for our plants. It's all perfect days.
It's all perfect days, and it's really having the sun manage your LED system.
Absolutely.
It really takes a lot of that nuanced control that you have to focus on creating your lighting strategy. You know, it makes the product easier to use. All right, thank you guys for taking the time to watch that video. And we just have a few questions here that we'd like to answer for you. Feel free to keep them coming in and we'll continue to answer them as long as we have time. But I do have one question here. Someone mentioned that I realized that you guys are doing a lot of in-house research. I read something about a photoperiod trial that you guys were running and how photoperiod is an important characteristic just like spectrum. Could you tell me a little more about that? Is that something you guys could speak to?
We'd love to talk about that. If you were able to catch our webinar back in May, we just had the beginning of the research then, And what Jake has been able to show is that actually a photoperiod, particularly with lettuce, as most of our work has been done with, a photoperiod of 21 hours is much more advantageous than a lower photoperiod, and actually taking the light, the DLI, and equilibrating it over a longer photoperiod rather than a short photoperiod. And now we wanted to take those learnings and then be able to see if we can apply those in the greenhouse using the sensor and the technology that we have. Jake, why don't you talk about your latest, greatest results?
Sure. So fresh off the press, so to speak, we have some recent results coming in from our greenhouse trials, and there's a handful of things that you wouldn't normally expect coming from these trials. So in line with what we've been seeing before, and as Melanie mentioned, the longer photoperiods providing better productivity. But some of the other effects that we're seeing in terms of lettuce, in terms of physiological disorders like tip burn, is we have a lot less tip burn under longer photoperiods. So even when we hold a consistent daily light interval, so the same total amount of light is received by the plants over the course of a day, the difference in photoperiod can actually result in tip burn if you have too short of a photoperiod. And certainly with our growth chamber trials, if you're in a vertical farm, certainly this is applicable. The longer photoperiods will also help with pigmentation production as well. So when we're developing these algorithms to use this light sensor in greenhouses and really provide the best lighting for your crop, we're taking photoperiod into account as well as intensity and spectrum to really drive the best of everything, not just yield, but also pigmentation and controlling physiological disorders like tip burn. And so we've definitely had some recent success demonstrating that in a greenhouse environment.
Great, thanks guys. I do have another question here. Someone was wondering about ensuring crop quality with the light sensor module. They're saying that they're interested in how it differed from the summer day from the cloudy day over at Cabrillo, and maybe we can just speak a little more to that experiment and that validation.
Well, if you looked at the total DLI, I think on the cloudy day, we were able to maintain that about 17. I'm trying to remember. Whereas the sunny day, we were able to maintain it at about 20. One of the things that the software does is it integrates the DLI over several days to make decisions about what the DLI should be the next day. So if you can imagine, if you will, sort of a rolling integration of what the DLI should be on a continuing basis. It's a little bit like, maybe this is a kind of an odd analogy, but if you just had a big Thanksgiving dinner one day, you might want to eat a little bit less the next day and eat little bit normal the next day. So really looking at that energy intake that the plants have had to face and utilize, and making sure that you will meet that production date. So for production date is, something for like Valentine's production or Christmas production, that's kind of kept in mind by the software to integrate this energy that's put in and how it can be smoothed out.
Great. Thanks, guys. I do have another question about how many light sensors are needed for using the solution. They're wondering if one light sensor can operate multiple units. Would either of you like to take that, or I feel free to jump in?
Sure. So, within a greenhouse environment, our light sensor is actually located within the greenhouse. And so that means we're dealing with a couple different aspects of stuff like structural shading and positional effects. So in order to really maximize the accuracy of your operation, we recommend having a good number of light sensors in there. A healthy number we've determined is around 20 to really get good uniformity. Obviously, if you have a smaller operation, we can still work with that as well, and that'll certainly be applicable. And it's really more about sensor placement to make sure you have good representation of what you're seeing in your greenhouse as well. But it can operate multiple fixtures. Once you have a base number of sensors, the number of fixtures you can operate that on is limitless.
Right.
Great. Thanks, Jake. And
that's also, you might want to think about if you have different varieties. If you're growing, 2 different varieties of lettuce or 4 different in your greenhouse, you might want to have different sensors associated with creating those different zones.
I wanted to add into that as well. As we talk about actual implementation of these DLI control algorithms, they're a little bit species specific. So the way these algorithms are going to operate and hit your DLI goals are going to differ by species, and how the fixtures are going to respond is going to be based on that. So we do have that aspect built into our fixtures as well.
Great, thanks, guys. So to kind of sum that up, it is very malleable, the amount of sensors that we can implement on our fixtures, but that's really a custom solution that when you come to us and you order your sensor modules, we're going to do an analysis of your entire facility. We're going to run a light plan for you. We're going to determine the proper amount of light sensor modules to really maximize your production for your crop type, as well as your region and all of the other variables that go into that. So if you're interested, feel free to give us a call or shoot us an email after this, and we'd be happy to run an analysis of your facility. I do have another question here. John Jacobs is wondering, he says that we did not provide any discussion of raising and lowering lights closer to the plant canopy when plants are younger or raising them as they grow. He says that he's read some information about this topic. Melanie, I believe that you just gave a speech about light planning and some of the innovative things we're doing there. Maybe you can give a very brief rundown just of how we're thinking about light and how we're really maximizing that uniformity by using some of the industry's leading edge software.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I did give a talk just at the Hort Science meeting recently. We don't recommend raising and lowering our lights, at least in the greenhouse environment. Some people, if they're growing things sole source, if they're growing cannabis sole source, they raise and lower to create intensities. But if we look at the physics of our lights, if we look at the beam angle of our lights, what we found is creating a uniform grid and hanging our lights high enough, we can get a very consistent uniformity. So again, that's sort of like if you're hanging your lights on a 10 by 10 grid, you want to hang them 10 feet or higher, and that will create a pretty impressive uniformity. What we do with our software is we do an analysis because the edges will still be problematic. And in some cases, what we do is look at lowering the lights on the edges, creating almost a dome effect. I've asked for our light planning people to give us light plans that are pretty much plus or minus 10%. I like to see no more variation than a plus or minus 10% in the uniformity in the light plans that we are now providing. And I think this is a big change from what's been in the past, where the software was not available. Good light planning software was not available in the past. And also there was an intuition where if you look at how high pressure sodium was done in the past, it was really just lighting in rows. It wasn't looking at the physics of how the light spreads were supporting each other, complementing each other to give uniformity. So again, it's not looking with your eye. Your eyes will fool you and make mistakes because a plant, for us in our eyes, a light level of, gosh, very, very low, 10 micromoles will look almost the same as 1,000 micromoles. We just can't discern that with our eyes, but certainly a plant will be able to tell the difference and will grow to that. So you have to use careful light planning. You have to have the monitors to be able to set that up correctly and make sure you have the uniformity. So those are the things that we do. So no, I do not recommend lowering and raising typically, but creating that sound light plan from the get-go and sticking with it.
Great, thanks, Melanie. And we have our in-house light planning specialists that, if you have any questions about the best way to implement light, they work within the software all day, every day. They've worked with every type of facility, every size of facility, and they're really going to maximize your lighting to save you the most cost on your initial investment while still ensuring that crop quality and giving you really room to scale within your facility. I only have one more question here. Jan is interested if we're doing any projects internationally at LumiGrow, and we actually do projects internationally. If you have any projects internationally, we're very happy to run a light plan for that. Give our partnership approach, our consultation as well for that. And we just recently are lighting a project, a 40-hectare project in Australia for Nectar Farms. That's going to be a very exciting project, using smart lighting in a facility that's completely energized by renewable energy, wind energy, and using smart farming techniques. So that's going to be exciting to see how our science develops there. And feel free to follow our press releases and our blog to continue to understand how we're implementing smart lighting all around the world. But thank you guys for joining our webinar. If you have any additional questions, feel free to email us at research@LumiGrow to contact the researchers directly, or sales@lumigrow.com. And stay tuned for additional webinar announcements, or visit us at Marijuana Business Conference 2017 in Las Vegas, Nevada. We'll be there between November 15th and 17th, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks a lot for attending, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Yeah, thank you.